Barakatah Yahweh, Barakatah Yahushai, Bahasham, Barakahagwadash, Barakatum. First and foremost, I want to give all praises, glory, and infinite honors to Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahushai. Double honors to the apostles and elders, a great millstone who rule and teach well. And peace and salutations to you sincere Akim out there, pushing this word in truth and sincerity to the four corners of the globe. May you brothers endure until the end. This is the brother Ra'aya with another video, and in this video, I'll be profiling an article from theguardian.com titled, "My Ancestors Profited from Slavery. Here's How I Am Starting to Atone for That." Families like mine have listened to the descendants of enslaved people. Today, we launch a new lobbying group, Heirs of Slavery. And hey, to you, sincere Akim and Akwat in the know, you should already know where this video is going, because the only way that there's going to be atonement for the slavery that you Edomites, known as these so-called white people today, put the true children of Israel, known as the so-called Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans today into, is for you to go into slavery. It's all written throughout the scriptures. There is no escaping the fates of your forefathers or what you committed in a past life, because contrary to popular belief, reincarnation is biblical. And again, things you've done in your past life, even though you may have not paid for it in that reincarnation, hey, down the line, you will eventually pay for it. And it's going to be no different for you Edomites. And your recompense for what you did to the children of Israel is quickly coming, because we're living in the end of your global rulership before you're taken out of power and those cold iron chains are slapped on you. And it's going to be your turn to build up an empire, to build up a kingdom, this time the kingdom of the children of Israel. How many people in Britain today, and not just Britain, but a lot of these Western Edomite European countries, as well as the United States of America, chiefly the United States of America, benefited from industrialized slavery in the Caribbean and in other places in the so-called New World. This entire infrastructure that you Edomites enjoy today was built off the backs of the children of Israel. Whether your forefathers had a direct hand in owning the plantations or not, you're benefiting from the fruits of it. Again, this infrastructure that's been built up for you, all the riches and the glory and this so-called history you like to revel in, had its origins in the transatlantic slave trade. A vast and many-stranded enterprise, it was responsible for 11% of British GDP at its height in 1800. Wealth and privilege seeps down the generations and trickle-down economics, like what did that devil Ronald Reagan say? And British slavery ended only 185 years ago. There must be hundreds of thousands, if not millions of Britons whose lives are touched by the money it generated. And this next little paragraph is rich. You aren't responsible for what your ancestors did. You are responsible for what you do, says the writer on culture and racism, Emma DeBerry. And aren't these Western Edomite countries and just so-called Western civilization built on Judeo-Christian ideals? So you should believe in the scriptures and everything that's stated in it, right? Well, then let's see what it says in the scriptures about the responsibility you have for what your ancestors committed. This is Ecclesiasticus or Sirach in the Apocrypha, chapter 41. I'm going to read verses 5 to 7. The children of sinners are abominable children, and they that are conversant in the dwelling of the ungodly. And sin, according to the scriptures, is the breaking of the laws, statutes, and commandments. And this entire society that you Edomites have built does everything clean contrary to the laws, statutes, and commandments in the scriptures. The inheritance of sinners' children shall perish, and their posterity shall have a perpetual reproach. And we're seeing this entire infrastructure that was built off of the back of the transatlantic slave trade today, a collapsing morally, economically, militarily, you name it. Your birth rates are declining globally. Hey, the so-called middle class is disappearing more and more. Your economies are on the verge of collapse, and these different nations who you've oppressed throughout these last 500 years or so, hey, are starting to call you out for your hypocrisy and your bullshit. Here you are saying, "Oh, we're the vanguard of democracy and civilization and human rights and cultures," when your nations, especially the United States of America, wages war for resources, goes in and overthrows sovereign elected leaders to set up puppets that are more sympathetic towards Western goals. And then what? They completely screw over the people in those countries, destroying their heritages and cultures and raping their nations of their resources, all in the name of human rights, women's rights, democracy. Hey, I'll give it to Donald Trump. He at least said the reason we went into Iraq was what? To take the oil. And and what did he do during that Syrian civil war? He said, "Look, we're in there, and hey, we're taking some oil." Even though it's a funny comment to make, he is at least a so-called honest devil, which can't be said for the majority of you Edomites out there. Here you are complaining about, "Oh, I didn't do anything. It was all my forefathers and all that." But look, here you are benefiting from the fruits, the wicked fruits, the rotten fruits of your forefathers' labors, and you don't want to admit that. And their posterity shall have a perpetual reproach, which we're also seeing. You Edomites getting called colonizers, racists, white devils, even though you're really red. European history being looked at, because that's what it is, and as well as American history, is a history of raping, robbing, and murdering people of color. The children will complain of an ungodly father, which is what we're reading about in that article. Edomites complaining about how, hey, we've got a perpetual reproach on our heritage and on how people look at us because of what our forefathers did. And it wasn't us. It wasn't us. Look, it was what our forefathers did. Because they shall be reproached for his sake. People finally calling you out for your bullshit and you being looked at as the main problem in society. Hugo Chavez said it best when he was president of Venezuela. And what was his whole thing when he was president? Getting those foreign oil companies out of his country and nationalizing their oil and gas resources so it could actually help the people and help the country, because these foreign Edomite gas corporations were doing what? Coming in there, opening up shop and taking the resources and putting the country into a state of poverty. But Hugo Chavez at one of those UN meetings said, hey, if you want to know the root cause of all the problems on the face of the earth, just look at people with blonde hair and blue eyes with a shaved face wearing a business suit. This is Isaiah chapter 14, verses 21. Prepare slaughter for his children. But what did that Edomite just say? You aren't responsible for what your ancestors did. You are responsible for what you do. Prepare slaughter for his children, for the iniquity, the sins, the crimes of their fathers, that they do not rise, nor possess the land, nor fill the faces of the world with cities, because the scriptures is all about an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth, righteous judgment. And like I said earlier, reincarnation is biblical. So a lot of people coming back today, hey, we're back there during the times of slavery, oppressing the children of Israel, having some hand in it. So now they're being reincarnated into their lot and feeling that perpetual reproach for it. And the ultimate judgment is going to be what? Being put into slavery yourselves. This is Revelation chapter 13. I'm going to read verses 9 to 10. And this is the last book of the New Testament of the Bible, which people like to say, everything that was stated in the Old Testament is done away with. This is Revelation chapter 13, verse 9. If any man have an ear, let him hear. He that leadeth into captivity shall go into captivity. And just go look up slavery on Google Images, and what are the first results that come up? The transatlantic slave trade, images of so-called Negroes, as well as some Latinos and Native Americans with chains and fetters of iron on them being led into slavery and onto plantations by who? So-called white people, Edomites. He that leadeth into captivity shall go into captivity. He that killeth with the sword must be killed with the sword. And all the way back into slavery until today, with a lot of these police shootings and random acts of violence against so-called people of color. You Edomites, they continue to kill the children of Israel with the sword. So what? You will be killed with the sword as well. He that killeth with the sword must be killed with the sword. Here is the patience and faith of the saints. And the hopeful elect are patiently waiting for these times to come when Yahushua, the Son of the Most High, whom the world ignorantly refers to as so-called Jesus, makes his second coming to save the elect of the nation of Israel, put an end to the rulership of these heathen nations, chiefly the Edomites, and begin establishing the kingdom of heaven with the 144,000 of the elect, which begins with enslaving you heathen nations, beginning with your elites. You aren't responsible for what your ancestors did. You are responsible for what you do, says the writer on culture and racism, Emma Dabiri. I examined my ancestors' involvement in a book published 2 years ago. Now I and others with similar histories have decided we should go further. We tried to listen and learn from the descendants of those who were enslaved. Today, we launch a new lobbying group, and that's exactly what everybody else needs, another bullshit lobbying group, which just gives lip service to atrocities that were committed in the past. Heirs of slavery, we hope to support the existing movement, asking nations and institutions for apology and discussions about repair. And to you so-called Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans out there, you should stop trying to lock arms with these heathens, chiefly these Edomites, and beg for equality, beg for reparations. This is their time to rule. Our time is to fulfill this last captivity, this last punishment of ours from the Most High for going off from following after his laws, statutes, and commandments. We'll get our reparations in the kingdom. And hey, these heathens are in their right mind to not want you Israelites on top and to want to keep you suppressed. First on that list is the CARICOM group of nations and its 10-point action plan for reparative justice delivered to Britain and other European nations in 2014. That request for talks has been derided and ignored in Britain, though not by the government of Denmark and the Netherlands. Acknowledgement, repair, and reconciliation, these are good things to work for in modern Britain. We hope more heirs will join us, and there will never be a reconciliation between you Israelites and these different heathens, especially these Edomites out here. Like I just said, it's their time to rule, and they've got every right to enjoy the fruits of their labors, no matter how horrific it was in treating our ancestors and us today. But hey, as we just read in those scriptures, they're going to be paid back for it. That's going to be our reparations. They are many. Records from the 1830s show that 46,000 individuals, including 2 of my 3 times great-grandfathers, received British governmental compensation for giving up their slaves at abolition. which was completed in 1838. Some put the money into land or into shares in railways and the other tech startups of the British Industrial Revolution. That huge injection of cash seeded new fortunes. Some of those families remain among the richest and most powerful in our country today. And so, again, you Edomites are benefiting from the fruits, the wicked fruits that your forefathers committed in the past. And again, reincarnation is biblical. You were back there setting up the infrastructure, and now down the line, what? You're enjoying the fruits of your labors, but also the flip side to that is that the sins you committed in the past that you didn't pay for in the past, hey, you're coming back to pay for it now and to pay for it in the kingdom of heaven. There is no escape from the judgments of Yahweh Bahashem Yahawashi. This is Exodus chapter 20, verse 5. And this is talking about the punishment for the children of Israel. What would happen to us for us not following after the ways of our power, Yahweh Bahashem Yahawashi, and following after the ways of these other heathens gods. That if we didn't get punished right then in that life for going off, then down the line, hey, we would be punished through the reincarnation. But as it says in Deuteronomy 30, verse 7, all these curses will be put upon our enemies. So the sins that you heathens committed in the past against our people, hey, now that these curses are going to come upon you, hey, you're going to receive the judgments of it. This is Exodus 20, verse 5. Thou shalt not bow down thyself to them, nor serve them. For I, Yahweh thy power, am a jealous power, visiting the iniquity, the sins of the fathers upon the children, unto the third and fourth generation of them that hate me. And that's the point I want to hearken in on. The iniquity of the fathers being visited upon the children to the third and fourth generation, because it also says in the scriptures that a son may not be punished for the sins of his fathers, nor a father punished for the sins of his son. And that's talking about your immediate son or father. Those sins that son or father committed shall be visited upon the children of the third or fourth generation, because that person is coming back through the reincarnation by about that third or fourth generation to receive that punishment. This is 2 Ezra chapter 14, verses 35. For after death shall the judgment come, when we shall live again. Reincarnation. You committed iniquity in one life, and you passed away without nothing major happening to you. Then you come back around the third or fourth generation and live again when that judgment comes for your sins. And then shall the names of the righteous be made manifest, and the works of the ungodly shall be declared. Hey, the sinners of children are abominable children, and they shall complain of an ungodly father, because they are reproached for his sake. You Edomites are coming back that lived in the past during the times of slavery and the hardcore oppression of the children of Israel, and now you're starting to receive that judgment for it, beginning with that verbal reproach, you being blamed for the sins of your forefathers, and then that physical reproach is going to come when the kingdom of heaven is established, and you get those chains slapped on you, and you get to pay back your crimes in full. You can check if your ancestors were among those compensated after abolition, sharing some 17 billion, and I'm not sure which monetary symbol that represents. I think it may be pounds, since this is talking about Britain. 17 billion pounds in today's money through University College London's Legacies of British Slavery Project, LBS, and its searchable database. I know many people who have had a big shock after looking through it their notions of their family history and of themselves turned upside down. Hey, again, their posterity shall have a perpetual reproach. The children will complain of an ungodly father because they shall be reproached for his sake. But LBS's list is just of the people who held the 700,000 enslaved of the Caribbean as property at abolition. It is only a snapshot of an industry that went on for 250 years. There were a host of ways to make a fortune or a living out of the vast enterprise of exploiting the free labor of enslaved human beings, Israelites, most without ever setting eyes on the horror that was a sugar plantation or a slave ship. So just like these people today, you'll have some that'll say, well, look, that was what my ancestors did in the past, so you can't blame me for that. But as we went through in the scriptures, hey, the sins of the father shall be committed upon the children to the third or the fourth generation. Nobody escapes their judgment. And as that paragraph just said, those that may have not had a direct hand in the actual enterprise of slavery, actually being on the plantations or the slave ships, they still benefited from it, from all the auxiliary businesses that came out of and benefited from slavery. So again, at every level, you Edomites are culpable for the transatlantic slave trade, and hey, you are definitely benefiting from it. So no Edomite is going to escape the judgment of slavery and going into captivity in the kingdom of heaven, just like every Israelite went into captivity when it was our time for punishment. This is Ezekiel chapter 21. I'm going to start at verse 1. Parable of the sword of Yahweh. And the word of Yahweh came unto me, saying, Son of man, set thy face towards Jerusalem. And remember, Jerusalem is a people before it's a place. And drop thy word toward the holy places, and prophesy against the land of Israel. And say to the land of Israel, Thus saith Yahweh, Behold, I am against thee, and I will draw forth my sword out of his sheath, and I will cut off from thee the righteous and the wicked. Seeing that I will cut off from thee the righteous and the wicked, the entire nation. And like I said, every Israelite went into captivity. Some more wicked than others, some more righteous than others. But regardless of the fact, the entire nation went into slavery and has felt the consequences of these curses. So it's going to be no different for the entire nation of you Edomites and you other heathens. All of you are going into slavery. All of you are going to have those curses of Deuteronomy 28 put on you as ye build up the kingdom of heaven for the first 1,000 years of the kingdom of heaven. Deuteronomy 30 verse 7. Verse 4, Seeing then that I will cut off from thee the righteous and the wicked, no escape. Therefore shall my sword go forth out of his sheath against all flesh, from south to the north. Shipbuilders, gun makers, rum distillers, cutlery manufacturers all profited. As ever, the big money was made by the financiers, moneylenders, mortgagers, and insurers, many of whose companies were gobbled up later by the banks whose names we know today. Looking at my own family's history, you see just how wide the economic reach of their business was. Every year, they shipped out basic British manufactured goods, from salted herring and beef to cloth woven in the east of Scotland, to feed and clothe the enslaved Africans and hired Scotsmen who ran their plantations. The profits from sugar were so great that it was cheaper for the plantation owners to manufacture everything. from bricks to saddles back in Britain and by new enslaved people from Africa when they had worked those they had to death. The life expectancy of a so-called African, really an Israelite, more specifically of the southern kingdom, Judah, Benjamin, or Levi, taken from the west coast of Africa to the Americas. The life expectancy of an Israelite adult newly arrived in the Caribbean colonies at the height of the trade was just 4 years. And remember, he that killeth with the sword must be killed with the swords. A lot of you Edomites are going to get worked to death in the kingdom of heaven, building it up. And at the other end of the story is government. My ancestors' records show they paid more in tax on their slavery business than the family ever made from them. It is clear, too, that involvement in banks that lent money to slavers was far more lucrative than the business of running a sugar plantation. The men who helped found the Manchester Guardian, for the most part, made their fortunes not from slave ownership, but from manufacturing with slave-grown cotton. Obviously, that makes the people behind those institutions no less culpable. So again, those that may have not been literally on the plantations or on the slave ships, in some form or fashion, they benefited from the transatlantic slave trade. So again, the so-called righteous and the wicked, everybody of the nation of Esau, Edom, is going into slavery. What do you do with this knowledge? People have been getting in touch with me since I published my not-for-profit book. Like me, many are aware that though not directly wealthy from slavery, we have privilege that derives from our recent ancestors' comfortable and empowered lives and the violence and greed that enabled those. I can't feel guilty about something I had no part in, but I do feel shame, such people say. There's much to feel ashamed of, then and now, but there is atonement of a sort available. That's just all, lip service and crocodile tears. As we've gone through in these scriptures in this lesson, we see what the ultimate atonement's going to be. Everything that you did to the children of Israel is going to be done unto you. And in this case, double-fold. He that leadeth into captivity shall go into captivity. He that killeth with the sword must be killed with the sword. Prepare slaughter for the children because of the iniquity of their fathers. That's it with this article, but I'm going to close it off in one last precept just to further hammer in the point. This is Jeremiah 30, verse 16. Therefore, all they that devour thee shall be devoured, and all thine adversaries, every one of them. And it's not just the Edomites that had a hand in enslaving and oppressing the children of Israel. These other heathen nations had a hand in it as well. And at the top of these different heathen nations, their elites know who the children of Israel are and have worked alongside these Edomites to suppress us from finding out who we are and coming back to our power. But this is a spiritual thing. This is not a carnal work of man. The Most High has put the Spirit on the children of Israel, beginning with the elect of the nation of Israel. The prophets waking up and then going out onto the highways and byways preaching this word, as well as putting up video epistles online to wake up the rest of the nation of Israel and put that righteous vibration of Yahweh Bahashem Yahweh Shai back in the earth. And as it says in the book of Judith, in the Apocrypha, chapter 5, when the children of Israel start calling back on their power, whatever heathen nation that's ruling at the time is going to be, made a derision, be taken out of power. But before we finish that Jeremiah 30, verse 16, this is Psalms chapter 83. I'm going to start at verse 1. And it says, the Most High implored to confound his enemies. A song or psalm of Asaph. Keep not thou silence, O God. Hold not thy peace, and be not still, O God. For lo, thine enemies make a tumult, and they that hate thee have lifted up the head. They have taken crafty counsel against thy people and consulted against thy hidden ones. They have said, come and let us cut them off from being a nation, that the name of Israel may be no more in remembrance. And the elites of these different heathens, have spent billions, shit, probably even trillions of dollars to hide the truth from us of who we are so that they can continue to oppress and rule over us. Our apostle elders have an account, I believe it was back either in the late 80s or the early 90s, where they were out up in New York prophesying on the streets, and a limousine pulled up, and these rich, well-to-do Edomite businessmen came out and looked at the 12 tribes sign, and they asked them, "How did you figure that out? We spent billions of dollars to keep that information from you before getting back in that limousine and speeding away." Hey, a true story showing that Psalms chapter 83 has taken place and continues to take place. Verse 5, "For they have consulted together with one consent. They are confederate against thee. The tabernacles of Edom," so-called white people, are mentioned first, the chief of the heathen nations that have oppressed us, and the Ishmaelites, you so-called Arabs. And remember, there was the Arab slave trade as well. A lot of these Arabs built the slave ships for the transatlantic slave trade of Moab, and the so-called Chinese, and the Hagarenes, Gabal and Ammon, the so-called Japanese, and Amalek, the Edomites mentioned again. And the Amalekites are the top tribe of the Edomites, and the Amalekites are these small hats, these 1948ers, these Jays, which owned a lot of the slave ships and put up the finances for the transatlantic slave trade. The Philistines with the inhabitants of Tyre, the so-called Africans or Hamites who helped the Edomites and the Ishmaelites and go into war against us in the interiors of Africa and enslaving us and selling us to the Edomites and the Ishmaelites. And besides that, just you heathen nations that have oppressed us even before the transatlantic slave trade all throughout our history. Just go read the book of Judges. Hey, nobody is going to escape the atrocities that they've committed against the children of Israel. But back in Jeremiah 30, verse 16, "Therefore, all they that devour thee shall be devoured, and all thine adversaries, every one of them, shall go into captivity, and they that spoil thee shall be a spoil, and all that prey upon thee will I give for a prey." Point blank, period. Again, "He that leadeth into captivity shall go into captivity. He that killeth with the sword must be killed with the sword." And that is the atonement you heathens, chiefly you Edomites, are going to make for the sins that your forefathers, which are really you coming back in the reincarnation, have committed against the children of Israel. So that's it with this video. With this video, I hope you sincere Akim and Akwath were edified. Just keep strong. We're almost out of this final wicked captivity of the heathen nations, chiefly of the Edomites. And as always, I'm going to say Abad Babal, Kwam Yasharallah, and until next time, Shalom.